A number of top GOP donors are reportedly expressing their concerns over Donald Trump's past spending of campaign donations. We're now hearing that previous Trump backers like wealthy financiers Stephen Ross and Larry Ellison have no immediate plans to help the former president, at least for now. According to CNBC, donors are focusing on efforts to help Republicans take back Congress in 2022 and eyeing potential presidential hopefuls like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and Senator Marco Rubio. So this is interesting. Alyssa, do you think that they're withholding not because they don't want to support Trump, but maybe they'd rather, I don't know, give the money to like a super PAC who they think will maybe spend the money better than Trump and his campaign did? Or do you think they're just like, no, we really don't want Trump?
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into this. Trump has such a significant war chest that I don't think this is going to make a demonstrable difference. And it's everything from small dollar donations to massive funding from billionaire types. So he's in a pretty good place in terms of the money and resources he has. It is also a well-documented fact that his campaign, egregiously misused money, and that I could see being a consideration for people on future giving. But I think the more interesting part of it is, Republicans' minds are not made up. Sure, Trump is the most popular figure in the Republican Party, and if the primary were tomorrow, he'd get the nomination, but it's 3 years out, and I think it's kind of anyone's game at this point. DeSantis has had a really big rising star in a big moment, but I could see room for a number of other names that aren't even being talked about, frankly, to come into their own. And I think a lot of donors are going to think about, hey, do we want 4 more years of Trump, or do we want something kind of like Trump, but maybe looks a bit different? Maybe the rhetoric's different, whatever it might be. Ryan, your take?
Yeah, I mean, super rich donors hate it when their money is misspent. It's a tick that rich people have. They can't even tell that they've given money because they have so much money. Yet if they hear that it was stolen or wasted or something, that drives them completely nuts. And the other thing they want is they want access and influence for their money. And donating to Trump's campaign is not you would know this better, but that's not the easiest way to get access to Trump or to have influence over him. You just have to kind of know the right people and be the last person that speaks to him before he goes on television or Twitter. Well, I guess he can't do Twitter anymore. But being that last person, you don't necessarily have to have given money to him.
That's a very good point specific to Trump. But to the point of the midterms, too, I mean, people do give because of access. It's a simple fact of how our politics works. And I think many people are thinking it's better to be ponying up for 2022 and have potential access to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy or whoever it may be than kind of waiting out the bloodbath ahead before 2024.
And also, Trump does have so much money that he can extract from his base of supporters that it dilutes the amount of influence that the super rich could have. I mean, that's in some ways that's the ideal that the left has been pushing for so long with the small dollar revolution. That if a candidate can be self-sufficient. Well, not self-sufficient, but can be sufficient based on their, a couple million donors giving $5 a month. And, they have perfected the art of fleecing their donors. Toward the end of the campaign where somebody would give a $500 donation and they would tweak it to a weekly donation. And so, the right has, over the last several decades, and actually going back to the 50s with fundraising over the mail, has really figured out ways to extract money from these from small donors. So maybe that means that the super rich have to find other avenues to extract influence, and that could be Kevin McCarthy and the midterms. I don't know. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, I think, to see that shift kind of happening in the public discourse and it's kind of reaching into the ears, luckily, of some of the politicians of we need small dollar donations and we want the backing of the people. And that's become way more of a better battle cry of, well, I've got the backing of the people, not necessarily of these rich donors. So I don't know if any of this, of not having wealthy donors, I think actually is helpful to a person in their campaign, actually. Of course, they need money, but if they don't really need the money, like you mentioned, Trump doesn't really need the money, then it's really more of a, hey, this is a win for me. And yeah, we do have to kind of pay attention to that tweaking and that manipulation to make it look like it's coming from small donors rather than from large backers. But it is really interesting to see how that, which sort of started on, with Bernie Sanders and the left, has sort of moved also into the right, slowly but seemingly more prominently.
Actually, Goldwater kind of pioneered this in a way, funded a lot of his campaign in '64 based on small donors. But a deep dive by ProPublica found that over the last 5 years, former President Trump amassed a new set of mega donors who were not previously big spenders in national politics, including the heir to the Mellon Banking and Rail Company, Pan Am Systems, Tim and Patricia Mellon, and Marvel Entertainment titans Ike and Laura Perlmutter. Other Trump donors include Dallas Pipeline billionaire Kelsey Warren and his wife, plus Buckley Capital Management owners Walter and Marjorie Buckley. So there's a lot of talk about how Trump, brought new voters out, that nobody knew how many voters there were in the middle of Pennsylvania until Trump ran in 2016. And then in 2020, he found even more who hadn't voted the first time around. But it appears that he's also done the same with millionaires and billionaires, that there were some who, just simply hadn't decided to get involved in electoral politics until Trump inspired them.
Or maybe they were even just sort of, it's hard to imagine iced out, that there would be a wealthy class of people that wouldn't have access. But it's, I suppose, possible that maybe the influence from certain wealthy people into politics had already been set, sort of like a club, right? A good old boys club in a way. And now with Trump coming in and being the new guy on the block and not having those existing relationships, a lot of people were able to take advantage of the fact that he didn't have those, that he had been a political outsider, and now was the time to kind of get on in there.
Well, and I think his insider-outsider approach is certainly a factor in it. Listen, he passed tax reform that most Republicans before him could have dreamed of getting through, and that was obviously something that I would argue the middle class benefited from, but the super wealthy also benefited from. He focused very heavily on benefiting some of the larger corporations in America. That obviously factors into some of these donors. But I think the thing that was unique about President Trump is he sometimes didn't have maybe the social sort of side of things of the conservative movement that previous presidents had, that would keep some of the uber wealthy at bay, not wanting to get into certain issues. He tended to focus more on the business side of things, which I imagine is a factor in this. But yeah, listen, he brought out voters that we'd never had before, brought out billionaires that had never given before.
And here we are. Tomorrow on Rising, we'll be back with friends of the show, editor-in-chief at The Real News, Max Alvarez, and culture editor at The Federalist, Emily Jashinsky. Plus, an indigenous educator discusses the Line 3 pipeline protest happening in Minnesota. And congressional candidate Chris Priest discusses his run against Congressman Andy Barr in Kentucky.
Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.